To give you a short introduction about them, Ilias Benjelloun is Senior Open Innovation Strategist at Desjardins Lab, as well as President and Creative Director at Montreal NewTech. And we have Austin Hubbell, and Austin is founder and CEO of Consilium Crypto. Thank you guys for being tonight. I would like also to thank you. I would like also to thank all the student club who are partnering with us, Concordia Blockchain Club, Concordia Fintech Society, John Monson Entrepreneurship Club, Poly Entrepreneurial Comité étudiant, l'Association des étudiants en finance et assurance de l'Université Laval et l'Université de Lucar sur le campus de Lévis. Thank you guys. The agenda for tonight, I will do a short introduction about FinTech Enhance. We'll have our first fire chat with Ilias, some question for Ilias, then our second fireside with Austin, then some question for Austin and some question for our both panelists and some closing remark. Let me introduce you FinTech Enhance. FinTech Enhance is community builder, FinTech community builder and ecosystem player. We are focusing in 3 pillars. The first one is education. We educate FinTech talent, like tonight through webinar or certificate. We support early stage startup, FinTech startup, and we collaborate with financial institutions to help to solve industry challenge. Our 3 main program is Ascension. It's our incubation program where we help FinTech startup from early stage FinTech startup from moving to the next stage. We have a certificate in FinTech where students from professional and students can learn what is FinTech about from the technology aspect, the regulation aspect, and how to raise capital when you are creating a FinTech. And one of our programs is Formaton, and I will go deeper into Formaton. What is Formaton about? Formaton is the Canada's biggest FinTech competition. The Formaton is 3-week open innovation competition where you build a FinTech startup or work on research project. It starts very soon on May 28th, and I will give you more detail about it. Formaton is split in 2 tracks. You want to get some knowledge and your first experience in FinTech, so this program is right for you. We have the startup track. You will have the chance to create a startup on industry challenge that will be provided by our industry partner. Or you want more to focus on research project and work on this challenge and present your finding at the end of the competition. It's a very good program, especially when you want to learn about FinTech. The program is split. It's split in different parts. It's 3 weeks. You will start on May 28th with orientation. You will know the people who are in the program. Meaning that you don't need to come with a team, established team. You will establish your team during the first day. And then the week will be split in 2 parts. 2 Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. and Saturday night, meaning that you can do that outside the work, and the demo that will happen on June 17. As I said, it's a very good program for you to get your first FinTech experience. And you can come from any background, from technical background, design background, law background, whatever. We need everyone to create a FinTech startup. My colleague will provide you the link how to register. I invite you to register as soon as possible because the spots are filling quite fast. And it's a good opportunity. And the good news is you will learn a lot about FinTech through our webinar, and it will be a great experience for you to come to Formaton. Without further ado, let me introduce you Leal El Hadi, our Interim Executive Director at FinTech Enhance, and Ilias Benjelloun. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pascal, for that. And thank you to everyone that's here. I know there's some familiar names that we see and some familiar people that we've kind of had before in the session. So very happy to see that. Happy you're spending a Thursday evening with us in one of the many university series that we'll have. I'm also very excited to be talking to Ilias. I've known Ilias for a while, and so I'm happy to kind of be deep diving with the extensive experience that he has. Before I do that, I just want to point out a few things. So one, as you probably see, there is the chat, the Q&A chat that you guys can ask questions on. Sorry, there's two separate things. There's the Q&A where you can submit your questions. So as we're doing the interview, and then kind of doing our fireside chat, if there's any questions that come up, feel free to use that. As soon as we can answer them and I can pull them up, we'll do that right away. Or if you want to wait till we get to the Q&A section, we can do that as well. Please also note there is the chat that's happening on the side. So you can also see the link. Nicholas has shared with you the link that we have there as well for the Formathon, and we'll be sharing content there. So if you want to comment there, you can. One last thing for those of you who came in a little bit later, you are all muted by default. If you have any questions or would like to ask the questions verbally versus typing it, please just raise your hands. You can do that from the participant square. So just raise your hands and we'll unmute you specifically so that you can ask your questions live. The last thing I'm going to say is we are actually live on Facebook Live. So just a small note there and just giving you guys a heads up. And we are recording the session. So if you have any hesitations there, just keep that in mind as well. All right, Ilias.
Yes.
Yes, we
hello,
have known
hello. I am very happy to be here with you tonight.
Yes, thank you. We've known each other for a while, and I'll let you guys know I met Ilias with a separate organization that's not necessarily linked to the startup ecosystem about 10 years ago, and then we met him again when he was working and supporting District 3. Since then, he's done some phenomenal work within the fintech ecosystem, well, within the innovation ecosystem here in Montreal. He has created and was one of the founders of Montreal NewTech. So if you haven't heard of them, please make sure you go participate, send your name in their emails. They send daily, weekly, and monthly newsletters that show you what's happening around the ecosystem. They also work and partner with a lot of different organizations. So they're a very exciting organization to follow here in Montreal when it comes to innovation. And he also works with Desjardins. So he has good experience with the financial institutions and the innovation ecosystem as well. So welcome, Ilias, officially.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. It's very, very exciting, and I love the fact that you're taking full advantage of the current situation to keep bringing value to the ecosystem. So super happy to see the work that Fintech Cadence is doing and how you pivoted your content and structure and program in a way on a dime, as we say. So good job.
That's great. Thank you, Ilias. So I did a very brief introduction of you, but maybe you can give from your perspective your entry into the innovation ecosystem and why you joined and what's kept you here for this long.
What kept me there for this long? Well, let's start with why, says the other. Well, it's the university series, so maybe a tiny bit of background on my end. So born and raised in Morocco. After my high school, I came to Canada to study finance. Quick stop in France, but then I came to Montreal to study finance. I love technology from the get-go. I loved how tech in general was an amazing lever to create. Some people like the canvas of a painting or a mic. For me, it was code at that time, and being impressed by how you can create stuff from scratch. Even during my work, I was always interested in technology in general, and seeing how at that time it was also a vector of growth. At the same time, as you were saying about ISEC and others, we launched two nonprofits. I had the chance and the opportunity to launch nonprofits called Action Bénévole Communautaire, ISEC, and others. And I love this kind of like, how can you help others and kind of like pay it forward, as well as the ability to learn from others who are just as passionate. Because I guess like the most passionate people are in this kind of fields as well. And merging both technology, paying it forward, or like working within a nonprofit world, creating things, brought me to the tech ecosystem here in Montreal with Montreal NewTech, that is 10 years old now. And from there, like it's the fascination with people who can actually create things. So that's why, like you were Pascal, you were talking about the Formathon. It's such an amazing opportunity to actually put your hands and like in kind of like creating your own bread, you know, like, and it's funny that we say like bread and butter, but like creating it with your own hands and using technology for that. So and why I stayed there, I would say, I know it seems very kind of like like a beaten path, but it's the people. It's like the going beyond the product that you can build or the startup that you can help, and seeing how they can flourish through all the Montreal NewTech demo days and like the coaching, the mentorship, the connection with bigger companies, helping them navigate that. Is the friendship that you build through it, and you realize after paying it forward a bunch of times, you realize that it starts paying back as well. And it's the value that it's also provided me throughout time, and so many opportunities that it's created to me for myself and for others around me that kept me there, I would say.
Yeah, that's perfect to see. And I think it's reflected in your current positions as well, right? So you did mention Montreal NewTech, which is great. And you also work at Desjardins. So you have two unique perspectives, one from a financial institution perspective, and then the other from an ecosystem organization. So maybe from that side, yeah, so from that side, maybe what I'll see is, do you find there's differences between the two perspectives that you come with?
Absolutely. And I actually, in a fun way, my work within the ecosystem brought me to Desjardins twice. So once back in 2012, 2013, that's why I lost my head. No, back in 2012, 2013, where it was about like building an innovation pipeline within Desjardins and like how can we actually create innovation. And it's a question that has been forever. I mean, innovating is at the core of everything. Even back in the days where PayPal like replaced Western Union in a way, 20 something years ago, and so like the financial institution and other organizations are always asking those questions. So like back in 2012, 2013, we tried to develop an innovation pipeline. I can dive more into details, but not right now. Then in 2015, 2016, I got to get there back as well through a hackathon in a way, and through organizing and bringing the community to work around problems or challenges of around healthcare. And of course, the perspectives are different. I mean, where do I even start? I don't know if you have like some specific questions, but the main challenges in those big organizations, I would say, are mainly around the size, the stability of those organizations. They are built to last, and they are built to manage risk. And when you talk about a financial institution, the reality of a financial institution, especially today, like we see it to the crisis we're living, is be about managing the trust. Like the main asset that they have, it's not the money that you have in your bank account, it's the trust that you have people having in you. So you cannot just like fool around, or you cannot just like throw yourself to the next wave. You have to understand a bit what is the long-lasting wave. And it's harder when you talk about like, I want a long-lasting wave to surf versus I want to just like take risk right and left and see what sticks. You cannot just like throw stuff at a wall and expect stuff to stick. Because we're also talking about, when we talk about Desjardins, it's our members. C'est les avoirs de nos membres. And it's a lot of trust that the society has in us. And when we see it in the current situation, it's even more important, because you see the stability of an organization like Desjardins that allows, in a way, the members to feel more comfortable today, in a way. And we can give back now today to society because we have this kind of cushion. So that's the challenge. Like, how do you manage, in a way, the opportunistic and the technology and the entrepreneurship mindset that can create innovation versus the importance of maintaining this trust and the importance of maintaining the stability and comfort, in a way, of your member or your client. That's almost like paradoxical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess off of that, since you do have both those different perspectives, and I know Desjardins, for example, is a very big advocate of creating entrepreneurs. And I know with Montreal NewTech, that's really your values, to support and build entrepreneurs. So from your perspective, and I guess we have to put this in context with what's happening right now in the situation, but what are some of the challenges you feel entrepreneurs go through? I would actually say in general, but then even a bit more related to today's environment with a Corona context.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. Did it get cut off there?
Yeah, I got cut off, sorry.
Great. Yeah, I was just asking.
So the main challenges that entrepreneurs are facing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that entrepreneur space in general, but then again, of course, with an emphasis on what's happening today as well.
Okay. So it depends. That's a large question. I would say like entrepreneurs. I think one of the most important aspects of entrepreneurship is a simple one, and it's not necessarily the one that I would like entrepreneurs to focus a lot, but it's also it's timing. When you're talking about entrepreneurs, and we've seen a lot, there are a lot of parameters that are a challenge of the entrepreneurs. And we talk a bit about the idea and the fact that idea doesn't matter. Like the idea itself doesn't really matter itself. It's the team that you're able to surround yourself with. It's the execution itself and who you are surrounded with. And that's one of the aspects, by the way, of the reason even of when we go back to like FinTech Cadence rise and the importance of FinTech Cadence is because it helps create this surrounding for the entrepreneurs to be more successful. It helps maintain and create the momentum and l'accompagnement throughout time so that it helps the entrepreneurs to be successful. But the reason why I started with timing, because it's something that sometimes we forget. It's like idea is nothing without the right timing. It's either the timing with the market or the timing of the technology around it, etc. So there is this importance of having the maturity to think of your idea and your execution and the timing that goes with it. And the reason why I'm talking about that is that we had the opportunity to work with a lot of entrepreneurs here in Quebec, but also like you can look at outside, where their idea is amazing, the team is amazing, but unfortunately they are maybe too early or a bit too late. When it's too late, like too bad. But like sometimes they are a bit early, and you have to understand that the life of an entrepreneur is almost like a butterfly. You know, like it's very, very short-lived if you're not able to find your right market, if you're not able to find your right client, if you're not able to find your right talent to be able to execute or work on it. So you have to think of the timing as well. And sometimes it's the maturity of the market itself where you are. And we're talking about like Desjardins or like other financial institutions when we talk about FinTech, but other organizations that are related somehow to FinTech, even though their client is not directly a financial institution or their product is not directly a financial product by itself. It's also about the maturity of that kind of market. So I think this kind of equilibrium is a real challenge for entrepreneurs. So again, like the equilibrium being your idea, the fit with the timing, and the fit with the right team and execution ability. And it's kind of like a triangle or a triumvirate that is really, really key. And I think that's where like a FinTech cadence, for example, becomes key to maintain this cadence without playing on a word, so that like you're able to get that triangle to work. So that's one. I think other aspects regarding entrepreneurs, and again, it's in general, is, and it sucks to say, but it's really finding the right fit between your idea and the people who execute it. And what I mean by that is I had the opportunity to work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have amazing technical talent. And they are the ones that break my heart the most, to be honest, because a lot of time the ability to execute on building the product is key in a way. Like otherwise we can all just dream, you know, like everybody has ideas, and sometimes that's the funny part when like you meet an entrepreneur who's like, oh, I cannot share with you my idea, it's so amazing. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that like 1,000 times. So like either like save me time and you and like go talk to someone else, or like let's cut to the chase and talk about it, because a lot of people have similar ideas. A lot. Every day, like people have similar ideas. It's the ability to execute. In the ability to execute, there is the ability to build the product. And I think it's really key, building the product, because, I mean, like, of course, otherwise it's just like a dream. But the other one is really to get it to the market and sustain it in the market. And especially when we talk about complex products or where the technical team is very strong, sometimes they still fail. And I'm not going to name names because that wouldn't be fair to them. But like I know currently some startups that are struggling, or some startups, especially in the B2B field, who failed recently. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, you had such an amazing product, but you weren't able to either listen to the good advice or surround yourself with the good people to be able like to market it and get it to market. And that's a real challenge, finding this kind of equilibrium between products and business in a way. And the reason why I'm talking about this, it's because, and it brings probably like to the further conversation around like the Montreal NewTech and Desjardins and like the innovation that can work together between the ecosystem and the bigger company, that most of the time one of the main challenges between the product team and the business team is like the understanding. how do you translate? How do you manage those people? How do you manage the teams together? And how can you sustain it in such a way that they can actually work together? It's like when you're doing rowing and, you know, like those boats where you have like one team going right and one team going left. You have to be able to synchronize both and trust each other and be able to translate to each other. And that's a huge challenge. It's much, much harder than people think. Now, the third aspect of the challenge is the current situation. So let's put that kind of like in more context, because truth being said, we're all at home. I would love to have a coffee with you, but I'm not. So I'll have virtual coffee with you. But the reality is that like today, cheers. So for entrepreneurs today, it's of course like it's a huge issue, but it's a huge opportunity as well. And we were literally like earlier talking about like Cooperaton and other products, etc. that we're working on. And as much as like of course like what's going on is like it's huge, and the impact. And we're lucky in a way to live in Canada, where no matter what's happening, like we have a strong government, like liberties, freedom, and like support from the ecosystem is here. So we were very, very lucky. And we have to think and like have to act very responsibly and like listen, etc., etc. But we will also have like to keep a little piece, maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, but like keeping a little piece of our time and our mind share, I would say, around the opportunity that comes with it, and like what will be life after COVID, and what is even now life around COVID, and what can we actually take advantage of. So of course, right now, the current entrepreneurs, unfortunately, depending on your industry, when you're talking about like the tourism industry versus like we are on Zoom right now. So anyone who's working on something that helps lives and the future of work, we've been talking about the future of work so many times, around that is huge. Like, you know, Dialogue, the company around telemedicine, is probably doing very well for themselves. So like all those become an opportunity. But of course, like it's a huge challenge right now for all those startups. And we've seen quite a lot that are hugely impacted. And, you know, we talked about Montreal NewTech and Desjardins, but I also co-founded like Stay 22 that is in the tourism industry, and today is hit very strongly. There are a few others, and there is a need for adaptation right now. So their main challenges, which are, by the way, and that like to go back to more concrete aspects, those challenges are still challenges for an entrepreneur with or without COVID. So some key challenges and some key things to keep in mind is the runaway. So managing your client's pipeline and your ability to negotiate with them and like get shit done in a way, and as well as like renegotiate in a way in a transparent, so that like you can you know, we talk about like flattening the curve, but like it's also like the reality that like your clients were probably here, and hopefully they are, but then like the client curve definitely flattens at some point. Unfortunately, easier to flatten that curve than the virus one, unfortunately. But like, how do you manage it, and how do you flatten it in such a way that you manage both your client's pipeline that is probably flattening, as well as like your provider or your expenses? So sometimes you have to pay your providers, or sometimes you have to manage, unfortunately, some layoffs or employees management, and that's like a huge issue that a lot of startups are facing today. But it just exacerbates it. Like that issue is always a good startup is a startup that is malgré tout able like to manage those aspects. So the talent management, as well as like navigating all the support ecosystem and changes. Like every day there is a new announcement. We were talking about 10%, then 75%, then it doesn't really apply for startups because of the growth curve of the startup, etc. And a lot of things are changing so fast. Right now, it's really hard to stay keeping the pulse on what's going on. So I think in the lack of having a crystal ball, I think the focus is really important right now for the startups. And we see like some successful startups we're working with who are actually changing their roadmap. So like some R&D things that they were planning on in 6 months or something like that, maybe they will move it ahead so that they are ready for the after COVID, and working on like what life would be afterwards. And like working today, like MyTax, for example, is making it even easier to hire. So if you have a little bit of money, you can work on some R&D, etc. Focusing on your team as well. And finally, focusing on this kind of like new normal that will happen after. What is the pivot that can happen throughout this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you said it best. Like, thank you for that answer, Ilias. It's very, very in depth. And I think some of the things that stuck out was, well, one, timing is key. Timing is really one of the big things. Whether it's timing, like you said, the market, timing for learning when you bring somebody through. But the other thing, and probably very relevant to where we are now, is that execution plus that timing, right? So thank you for hitting on that, because there's ideas are a dime a dozen, and I think we've lived in the ecosystem long enough to know that. So just iterating and echoing the agreements there is, it's not about the ideas anymore, it's about the execution, especially now. And what I'm going to assume are the participants who are on this call, people who are interested in fintech or interested in the entrepreneurial world. Now is really the time to execute on your ideas. So just iterating again what Ilias is saying, and saying that execution is really what's going to be the distinction there. I will say thank you for throwing in our cadence name very organically into the comments. So thank you for that, Austin. That's going to be a challenge for you. Maybe like 2 more questions, Ilias, before we open it up to the attendees. And I see there's already some questions being asked. But one, we talked a lot about the current situation and the challenges, but what are the skill sets that people need to start developing to be able to navigate the fintech ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem?
That's a good question. I'll be honest with you. I think it depends where you are, like how close are you to this ecosystem? And let me explain. When we talk about skill set, like if you're like an early, I would say, student, like you're just starting to study and you want to navigate this ecosystem, I would say think more and more of like the kind of like T-shaped kind of like skill set that you have to develop. So having a good understanding of the technology or like the finance aspect, like you choose depth. So have a good understanding of that aspect and the value that you can provide, as well as like a fairly, not shallow necessarily, but like a good rounding understanding of what actually the ecosystem is. Because usually navigating that ecosystem is coming first from like being able to connect with either like the support groups like yourselves and organization that can support that and accelerate that. So like that's not necessarily like a skill set per se, but the skill of both connecting at a wide level and being able to go in depth on a subject. It may sound simple, but I think it's key, because that's what you can not leverage. I don't like the word leverage, and just after talking about like paying it forward, but in a way like use that as well, because it will come a time where it becomes really key, both either your network or from an opportunity perspective, because I believe that like the real opportunities are not necessarily like appearing like a huge mountain in front of your face, but like in small aspects. So I think that's a skill set that you have to develop. I think, so that's not necessarily, I mean, a skill set, but like that's a skill that you have to develop, like this kind of like interconnection. Another one is being comfortable in complexity. And what I mean by that, and well, like they can ask questions afterwards, but what I mean by that is I don't think that we're going back to any time where it will be simpler. You know, like today we have this kind of like complexity of like all the movement, like we had like the crisis 10 years ago, there is now the disease and virus, etc. But beyond those kind of like big changes that are happening in an ecosystem, it's tangible and true innovation happens in complex environments. Like simple stuff, it's done, it's over. Like the opportunities are done, like you're too late, sorry. But when you see, like, for example, an organization like Desjardins, or you see a large group, or you see an ecosystem itself, those are like kind of like complex beings, and being able to understand them becomes really unique, because it's something that even AI cannot really replace. So understand, like the first one was like kind of like the T-shaped aspect, having like the interconnections between humans, et cetera, et cetera. The other one is like understanding better like those complex organizations and being comfortable in it. That I think is really a key aspect, especially if you are from the business side and you don't necessarily have like the technical acumen, but finding the right opportunity will be in this kind of like complexity that you can navigate in a way. And I would say like the third one is the translation skills, because more and more, and like to do the parallel of like what we do with the Cooperaton, or what I do within Desjardins with the open innovation endeavors, or Montreal NewTech with the creative collision, and everything that we tend to like push forward is at the crossroad of either two industries or two type of people or two type of teams, or sometimes people who don't even like each other, and you still need to make them work. If you talk about a big organization and a startup, that's a complexity that you have to manage between like a smaller team that is more agile, that is more hungry, etc. You have a larger organization that's job is like to be stable and like kind of like almost maintenance is more important than innovation, even though we want to innovate. And being able to translate the needs and the expectation and the day-to-day of both together to make them work together is huge. And I think it will become more and more relevant in the sense that, like, as we've seen, a huge amount of work is going to change. And I'm not just talking about COVID, before COVID and after COVID. COVID will like last maybe for 18 months, and that's fine. Like it will take a toll. Hopefully we'll all create opportunities out of it. But after 18 months, we'll all go back to a certain new normal. But when we're talking about AI, when we're talking about like the digital transformation and like all those kind of like job automation, etc., like accounting work, a lot of finance work, etc., will either disappear or be changed so much that it won't look like what it is today. So being ready for this kind of future is a lot of soft skills, but it's the ability in a way to understand the hard skills and manage the soft skill and be at the crossroad of those. Because otherwise you'll be just like on a production line and not like in a factory, but like a knowledge factory.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to balance, which is what you were saying earlier on as well in your previous question. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And that question is around a lot of the people who we have on the call today are either university students or thinking of entering the startup world or have dabbled in it, but haven't necessarily committed. So from your perspective, what insight can you give them on why they should choose this innovation ecosystem within FinTech and actually within the context of what's happening today? So you touched on it a little bit, but maybe if you can elaborate on the insights you can give there.
Yeah, absolutely. We start with why and we finish with why. I would mix it like with the why and the how actually, because I think like a piece of that question brings also the how. Honestly, like the why, and I think, and I hope that throughout the conversation we had today, you kind of like felt it, is that like the world is not going back anytime soon. Like it's going to be more complex. It's going to be more, I would say faster. It's going to evolve way faster than what our parents or grandparents felt, or even my generation, to be honest with you. Like the next generation, people who are 10 years younger than me, like it's going to be just faster. So being in this kind of like entrepreneurial, innovative, technology-driven ecosystem is key if you want to be part of this train or like this rocket ship that is going to lead the world. It's as simple as like just have a look at the stock market. If you're in finance, like you know what were like the top 5 companies 10 years ago and what are the top 5 companies today. The top 5 companies in 10 years may not be the 5 that we have today. And that's where like it brings me to the second part, that like you have the opportunity to build your own thing. You have your opportunity. You know, we have a lot of people, and especially today, who are worried about the future. And that worry of the future, well, might as well, instead of like waiting and worrying about the future, you have the opportunity to actually create the future. And I think the second piece here is that being part of this entrepreneurial ecosystem and the technology-driven ecosystem gives you a huge opportunity to actually be part of the people who are actually going to shape it. And the third aspect, I think, it's just the quality of people and the energy of people and I would say the amount of upside. Like I know the finance people like to hear upside. The upside there is amazing. Like you get the chance, and more like the salaries, the employment there is really interesting. You're taking risks, but like you have really interesting opportunities there. So there is a huge upside there. On the how, I'll do it in like really 10 seconds. First, be part of those events, go to events, start to be selective. At the beginning, you don't need to be that selective, but it will create and like what I call like manufacturing serendipity. So like manufacture your own serendipity, go to different events, don't be complacent, don't go to the same events all the time. Try one on FinTech Cadence, try another one, etc., etc. And you have the chance now to do it through webinars, etc. So it's even easier. The second part is be involved, actually, not just be a watcher, don't be on the bench. For the people who are in the consulting field, you don't want to be on the bench, be on the ground, be on the playing field. So like volunteer for FinTech Cadence, ask them if there are opportunities, volunteer for whoever. And third is practice, practice, practice. So you can go to a startup weekend, you can go to a hackathon, there is cooperaton or whatnot, and you have to practice. And being part of the FinTech formaton, for example, hopefully you'll actually convert your idea or like you'll join an idea. And yes, don't be afraid of just joining an idea, because it's not just like having an entrepreneur, but having the entrepreneurial mindset. So join a new idea and be part of a team, and hopefully it will work out. If it doesn't, it's fine. You're still at the university. You can try next year again.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ilias. I love that sentence. Manufacture your own serendipity. That's a beautiful, beautiful quote. So I'm going to thank you for answering my questions, but I'm also going to open it up now. We have a few minutes to take questions from the audience. I see there's already one. I'm going to start with Bassem's question. And he's asking you about the timing that you mentioned. So he says, when we talk about timing, are we talking about economic timing or player ranking in the market?
Player ranking, what's that? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question.
Yeah,
player ranking, what's that?
That's a good question. If we
so
can
I would say, yeah, you can ask me your question. I'm sure like you have an awesome clarification here. I would say timing, well, like in the weighting of that. So if I understand well, is it like economic timing or is it like something else? I think the timing is, it's a bit when we talk about product market fit. I'm sure like if you do the formaton, you'll hear a lot about like product market fit. So the market can be not ready yet. Something simple, like if we're talking about like downloading music, for example, if broadband is not here, like the frustration of downloading music is so high that you don't even want to do that and you keep like buying CDs. Or same thing for like the regulation now in the financial institution, or others, I would say. There are so many regulations and the friction is so high that a lot of the current innovation around like what can be deployed, and you can talk with the whole bunch of startups like Milo and North One and others who were in Fintech Cadence, who had hard time and they've been able like to sustain it for a bit, but because the friction was so high in the market, it takes a bit longer. So if you're too early and you don't have a good runaway or you don't have like the ability to influence sometimes the regulation or the market itself, there is not the right fit. So maybe you're too early and the users are not ready, or you're too early and the technology is not ready as for the downloading the music or movies, like Netflix, for example. We're all on Netflix today, but imagine being on Netflix with the low capacity of downloads. That would be so frustrating that nobody would be doing it. So same thing for the market and the users themselves.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think
that did answer your question.
Yeah, he elaborated a little bit on the mover position and the first and late movers, and I think what you're touching on is absolutely correct.
The first, second smart, fast seconds or first mover. Well, honestly, that's like stuff in the books, like first mover advantage, blah blah blah. I would say like executing well and being a good second is good. Depending on the market, there are markets as we've seen where the kind of like first mover advantage creates the ability to, I would say to become like a behemoth in the market. But if you see like the 5 bigger companies, like whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon or Apple, they are not first to market. They are very good at being very good seconds. Like whether you're talking about the iPhone, iPod, or whatever. So again, like it's a bit about like navigating the complexity and understanding that the nuance and the I would say your success will depend how elegant your solution is and how excellent you deliver on it. So really about elegance and excellence. So it's not about first to market. Honestly, first to market usually I know we talk about like go off the beaten path and like create your own track, but usually it's people who can like follow seconds, learn from your mistakes, and being able to learn very well from other people's mistakes, as well as like see the nuances there where you can bring more value in an elegant way so that the users engage with it. But it's a very good question because I think a lot of people really think about innovation as the product and creating it, and they tend to underestimate the elegance of the usability of the user experience and the delivery of it and the go-to-market strategy from a human perspective and the psychological perspective. So those are key, and usually being a second to market, fast mover, and smart learner are key. So good question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bassem. I'm gonna hop on to another question from Als. Als, can you hear us? Nick, if you can please unmute Als's channel. Perfect, there you go, Als. So you can go ahead and ask your question.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ilias, for your time. I really enjoyed that last question specifically. And I think a lot of people, I know both of you really touched upon this, is that when they come up with an idea and they know someone already came up with it, it discourages a lot of entrepreneurs. Say, oh, there's already someone in that field, or they always compare. So it's expanding on what you actually said. But when do you say, okay, we need to step away, there's too many competition? Or when do we say, you know what, there's actually value that I can do there with the right team? Do you understand it's entrepreneurs that come into this and they already know it's a very competitive industry, to put in another 2 years knowing that it's going to be extremely difficult? Where did you see the line to say, okay, you know what, this is something that you guys shouldn't go forward with, or there's a clear gap in the market and we can definitely like add value there? So could you just expand and like on how to keep people motivated, or even just, you know?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. Thank you very much. Great question. I would say, like, the question is amazing, and I think the answer is a little bit complex, but like I won't go too much into detail, and I'm sure like we can get the chance during FinTech add-ons to discuss that into more detail. But overall, I would say it depends. I'm sorry to get this answer, but it depends on the market where you are. And so, like, to go back to like the basics of like management and stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I haven't studied that for a long time. But one of the forces and like the competitive advantages forces is like the barriers to entry. So when you're talking, for example, of a social network, let's say overall, or like how the social network, meaning the value that you're adding by each user that you're adding to a certain structure or whatever. So there is the data network, like Amazon has so much data on all of us that they are able like to leverage this as a huge competitive advantage. I think the logistic aspect is the consequence of all the data they have. So that's a huge value add for them, and that creates a huge barrier to entry. Social networks, of course, like we're all on like those Instagram of the world and TikTok and whatnot. So like all those markets in a way have like a social network effect that either from a human perspective or a data perspective or whatever, where you compound the data or the humans in that box, and it creates a barrier to entry. So that's really huge. Like the second mover better be super fast to be able like to go there. And the metric that so to keep motivation, as you answered, your metric will probably be around like user acquisition and user retention, of course. So like how much like user you're able to do. And even early stage, and a lot of startups do the mistake of spending too much time building something in that regard. And they're like, oh, we spent like 2 years building something, and now like we don't have the motivation anymore because people are not there anymore. So like you need like to be able to start getting those metrics early on and not spend too much time building it. On the B2B side, and on many products that has sometimes high cost of acquisition, but a high lifetime value of customers. So that's like it becomes a customer, and the lifetime value of customers. I would almost say that honestly, it's always the right time to enter that market, even if it seems very competitive. You shouldn't be deterred to enter that market, because sometimes the tweaks are slight to really differentiate you from your competitor. And as long as you have, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe like 100 to 10,000 people who are your customers, you'll do fine as a startup, especially if you're able like to get that fairly quick. But as long as you have like 10 to 100 customers who are ready to pay for your product, know that you're in the right market. Well, like unless you have like a huge family, that's another problem. I'm just kidding. But as long as you have like 10 to 100 people early on who are ready to pay for your products again, especially in your B2B, and especially if you have like a high lifetime value of customers, you're on the right track. It's fine. Having competition, if anything, validates your market. So that's a good thing. Do I answer your question properly here? Because your question was about like, when do you throw the towel, right? More or less. Or how do you keep yourself motivated?
I think you covered it well, Ilias. Thank you very much. And Alice says, yes, exactly, you got it. So thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I want to give you a big thank you, Ilias, because taking time and spending time talking to new people who are looking to enter the ecosystem, or people who are already in it looking ways to engage with it. We really appreciate the time that you're giving us. So on behalf of us and all the attendees, thank you very much. To everybody else, we're now going to be moving on to the second speaker. So Pascal will be introducing Austin to you guys, who's with Consilium Crypto. And then if you guys do have any questions for Ilias in the meanwhile, please send us a message and we'll make sure to address it as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leal. Thank you, Elias, for this great conference. Now I have the pleasure to welcome Austin. I had the chance to meet Austin 1 year ago, more than 1 year ago, at a student conference about finance and AI. And Austin is the CEO and founder of Consilium Crypto, and it's very interesting because Consilium Crypto use AI in the crypto market. And Austin, I would like to know more about you, if you can share about you and about Consilium Crypto.
Absolutely. Yeah, first of all, to Leal and the whole Fintech Cadence team, thanks a lot for putting this on and for inviting me. This is really great. So yeah, a little bit of background about myself and Consilium. My personal background's in software development and machine learning. I went to Concordia University, studied software engineering, got right to the end of my degree, and then decided to leave and go into the startup world. So I never actually finished my undergrad, but got a lot of great knowledge from that and a lot of amazing experiences out of Concordia. So in terms of Consilium, we started the company about 2.5 years ago. We're a big data company that focuses on providing analytics and research, so data-driven tools to asset managers and exchanges in cryptocurrency and digital asset space. So in a sentence, you can kind of think of us as a Bloomberg for cryptocurrency. And to dive in a little bit deeper, what we actually do is we work with funds to help them find alpha, so to find strategies and an edge in the market, and then we help them execute trades when there's times of thin liquidity. So when it's very hard to find sufficient buyers or sellers, we have technology that helps them kind of locate those buyers or sellers and make the trades that they need to make. And then on the exchange side, we help exchanges attract and retain high value traders. So we provide them with tools that help them find really sophisticated traders, and those sophisticated traders typically come with a lot more capital than the average Joe. And so the exchanges really like that, and we try to use machine learning to kind of power those tools.
Thank you, Austin. There is a lot of challenge to be an entrepreneur, and there is a lot of challenge to be an entrepreneur in fintech. Can you share with us what are the biggest challenges you have found to work in fintech as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we probably had a few more challenges than most companies out there, just because of the timing and the industry that we chose to launch this company in. I think any crypto company will have a little bit more higher barriers to cross in terms of issues in the industry. So one of the biggest things that we had trouble with was clarity of regulations. So this new technology came out, blockchain, everybody kind of jumped on it. It started to get a lot of hype. And the last people to kind of catch up and understand this properly were the regulators. So it created a ton of issues. I remember in early 2018, I think it was January 2018, just trying to open up a bank account, a simple checking account for Consilium, which is a Canadian corporation. And I went to BMO, I went to TD. I think finally I went to about 3 or 4 different banks, and finally my second try at CIBC, they gave us a checking account. So it was a big challenge for us just because we had crypto in our name. Even though we're a data company, we're not an exchange, we're not an asset manager. It was a huge challenge just to even get a bank account open. So that was a big struggle just out of the gate. And then after that, just trying to steer clear of any regulations that may be coming down the pipeline has been a challenge, because there was no clarity from day one when we started this thing. So we have always been clear to be a technology company and not fall under any of the financial services regulations. But overall, it's just been a huge challenge with regulators, and it's cost a lot more with lawyers than I was hoping.
I understand. Yes, it's quite difficult, fintech, but it's a very interesting sector. I have a question. You say that it's difficult, but why you will encourage people to enter in fintech space? as an employee or as a fintech entrepreneur?
I think to enter the fintech world in Canada is really, really interesting, and it might be one of the better places in the world to do that. Canada as a country, we only have a handful of major banks. It's very difficult for any kind of challenger banks or others to come in and dethrone them. Most of these banks have anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 employees. So it's very difficult for them to pivot and move and kind of enter new industries or develop new technology. And it creates a lot of opportunity for startups and smaller players to come in and build technology and build products on top of their infrastructure. So most of the banks right now will have a corporate VC or corporate innovation area where they're specifically looking for startups to come and make things easier or change the ways that they do business. So I think the fact that Canada is kind of locked down in terms of banking and financial services provides a lot of opportunity for people to come into fintech with new ideas and leverage all of the work that the banks have done and potentially look at a good acquirer or long-term partner by working with these banks.
Cool. Your company is developing, and I'm sure that you want to expand your team. What kind of skill do you look for when you are hiring for your company?
The biggest thing that we look for is kind of a scientific mindset. So we want people to be able to look at data, understand it, formulate a hypothesis, and test it. And that doesn't necessarily mean in a data science or machine learning context. It can be design, it can be marketing, it can be business development. It's just really important to us and our company culture that as a data company, we're walking the talk, you know, or we're walking the talk. I think that's the correct way to say it. But we're looking for people to come in and they can really find a structured way to look at a problem. That's one of the biggest things. And then the second one would be the ability to self-learn or go out, take courses, and be involved in things like the formathon or the certificates. Anytime we see that people have done online courses or kind of extracurricular activities that relate to their field of interest, that's a big plus for us because it just shows that you have passion for it and that you're willing to go out and spend your own time and in some cases your own money to go and learn more.
Makes sense. Ilias earlier was talking that he met every day good entrepreneur, but sometimes they are failing. And some of them may fail because they don't have the right person at the beginning. And I know that especially when you are a startup, your first employee are crucial. How do you create a perfect team for your company, especially for Consilium Crypto?
So for us, I think we got really, really lucky, actually. We posted a few things on LinkedIn. We reached out through our network and said, this is what we're doing. These are the positions that we're looking to fill. And we were really fortunate that our first two employees were just rock stars, really. I mean, we've interviewed 30 or 40 different people, and the two that we took a risk on, or rather they took a chance on us, just worked out really well. And those first two employees are actually still with us today. And they actually got along so well. They'd never met each other before, and they met through Consilium, and they're now roommates. They moved in together. So it was pretty funny how that worked out. And I think just being willing to give people freedom, find smart people, find people ideally that are smarter than you, and get out of their way. And that's a quote from someone else, but it's a principle that we try to really implement and live by at Consilium.
It is very interesting. And what excites your team to come every day to work for Consilium, to work with you? I know that you are a very cool guy, but...
Well, I think a lot of our team, at heart, we're data nerds. We love looking at big data sets. We love trying to analyze them in different ways and find little bits of gold hidden in these massive piles of data. And one of the things that has helped us attract talent over the longer term is the fact that we're collecting this really unique data set. So yes, team culture, yes, compensation and benefits and things like that. But I think to get the best talent and the smartest people, you just have to offer them a really hard problem to solve and enough tools for them to actually work on the problem. So you don't want to have a brilliant data scientist come in and spend all of his time cleaning data or organizing data or filtering through date labels or things like that. You want to have tools in place so that they can get to the interesting work and really apply their knowledge as quickly as possible and get all that boring stuff out of the way for them. And that's a lot of the work that our CTO does is cleaning up the data, making sure that it's ready to use. And that's a lot of the work that I did in the early days. You just have to get in the trenches and do the things that other people don't want to do. And then hopefully the smart people will come and take over.
It makes totally sense. Yesterday, we were talking about your CTO and how you manage to engage him. And finally, during the situation, right now in COVID-19, it can be very difficult for startup and big group. Can you share the story you told me, if you don't mind, of your CTO yesterday, or how you managed to attract him and to your company?
Sure. Yeah. So there's 3 co-founders within Consilium. There are CTO Fadi. I've known him for 5 or 6 years. We met back in Concordia, and I had been telling him about this idea. He's been helping me. He helped me kind of work on the early code base for Consilium, and I was really trying to get him to leave his great stable job and come take a risk on this startup. And he had a little bit of a different risk profile than most of the other people at Consilium. He was in his early 30s when we were in our mid 20s. And so he had a family, he had a wife, he had children, and it was just a very different choice for him to leave that stability. And so it's interesting how things played out, because he was always concerned about will Consilium be here in 6 to 8 months? How are we going to pay the bills? Like all the normal concerns that people have working at a very early stage startup. And the tables have actually turned now with this whole COVID crisis. He was speaking to me a few days ago, and some of his friends and colleagues or former colleagues were getting laid off, unfortunately, which is it's really too bad. But he's actually got more stability now at Consilium than he would have had at his old job. So it's great that worked out, but it's also a real shame that companies out there are being affected so badly by this virus, and everybody's going to have to tighten their belts a little bit. So it's a little bit of a mixed feeling, but it's kind of cool to see startups give more stability in some cases.
I'm glad that he's very happy, and I'm glad that you were able to have him in your team. And I have a question. What do you believe Fintech can bring to Canadian consumer and to business? You talk a little bit that there is a lot of opportunity in Canada because there is a couple of banks and it's very difficult to enter to the market. But can you tell me more about it?
I think at its core, Fintech is looking to bring kind of financial security or financial well-being to everyone. And that's done through a variety of different ways, whether it's insurance, whether it's personal finance, whether it's investment or wealth management. But at the end of the day, I think when you can take away the worries of finances, or will I be able to pay rent next month, and ensure people that they have a plan for the long run, and show them with data, okay, if you save this amount, you will be able to retire at this age. And if you have this insurance, you'll be covered from these things. And just lowering that kind of barrier to information and understanding is so important. And if we can remove the frictions between everyday people and achieving those goals, and even just understanding those goals before trying to achieve them, I think that just brings everybody up, and a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that's kind of the understanding from my perspective of Fintech as a whole.
It makes sense. I'm very interested with what your company are doing, and how do you plan the future, because there is a lot of uncertainty in crypto market. And how do you think about the next feature, next product you will create for your startup,
It's extremely difficult, especially in crypto. I mean, all these areas of technology are changing so fast, and then you layer in some crazy crypto technology on top of that, and you have people all around the world that are working 18-hour days, and the whole industry just moves so fast that it is difficult to predict what will be the state of this market in 3 months, or maybe even a month. Things can change. So the approach that we've taken is really to build really solid kind of Lego blocks of technology. So we want to be able to have reusable pieces that if the market changes tomorrow, or if some new development comes up, or some new regulation comes down the pipeline, we can quickly take these Lego blocks and rebuild them into something else. So it's not so much about predicting where things will go a year or two from now. It's just making sure that we're in a position to change very quickly and adapt at a moment's notice.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yes, I think it's very difficult for anyone before COVID-19 or after COVID-19 to predict what will come out. But I'm sure that there will be a lot of opportunity in crypto, in AI, and in fintech sphere in general. Thank you so much, Austin. I will open the floor for some questions. If anyone on Zoom have any question, you can ask in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone and ask the questions that you may have for Austin.
Perfect. Hi, Austin. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hi, thank you for showing up and really giving us a kind of a glimpse into your brain and how it works and what you did to get here. I know we've spoken quite a bit before, but I just wanted to know specific, because especially when it comes to crypto, you're really looking for a very the human resource aspect of building your team is extremely difficult for someone like yourself. Not everybody has experience in crypto. Not everybody has that the knowledge of what you actually want to do. It could be very, avant-garde. So my question to you is, how do you, other than like sending like the links on LinkedIn to recruit, how do you find these specific people to really build your team? Like, how do you find those gems?
Well, yeah, it's been a huge challenge for sure. I mean, I think two of our longest standing employees, they actually found us. So we had already made an offer to someone else, and we've gone through the whole cycle of trying to hire and posting on job boards and all of that. And out of nowhere, I just got this email in my inbox with 2 or 3 paragraphs explaining like why that person's the right fit, why they're excited to work here. So we got really lucky in the early days, but moving forward and trying to scale that HR process has been a huge challenge. I mean, we've had a little bit of turnover. Some people joined the team. We thought that they were great. We thought they were doing great work, and then they actually came to us and said, "I'm sorry that I can't keep up with the pace of the company." Like they felt that things were moving too fast and they weren't able to keep up. So it's very difficult to find that perfect person, and especially when it comes down to the business development side of things or the sales side of things, because there isn't a lot of track record in terms of people selling within the crypto industry. Everybody's still kind of building and testing. And so finding the ideal candidate to fill in a role for, I don't know, CRO or something like that is a huge challenge. And us, I've actually reached out to you for help with that. So I don't think we found the magic formula yet, but we're working on it. And ideally through events like these and conferences and whatnot, we'll just get our name out there and just talk to as many people as possible, and hopefully we can find the right fit.
That is perfect. I think just generally with anybody that kind of wants to start their own business, most of us, whether we're very inclined to be business oriented, we have a hard time finding those tech people. And if you come from a tech background, it's so hard to find those business people. So hopefully, I mean, I try to encourage people to do the formathons and the cooperathons to actually get to meet people. But you know what? Thank you for that candid answer.
Absolutely, yeah. There's actually one more thing I would like to mention here. Just going back to the what skills do you look for when hiring question. there's a program right now. So just to back up, I think it's a difficult time right now for everyone in the world, and startups are going to be kind of tightening their belts a bit. They'll be a little bit more reluctant to hire new people or to take risks or to hire interns. And there's a really great program that we've used a few times now. It's called ICTC. So it's the Work Integrated Learning Program. And what they'll do is it's a federal subsidy that will pay 50% of the salary for any new intern that works in AI, big data, fintech, cybersecurity, digital marketing. They have this long list, and they've opened it up to any undergraduate student that from any program. Actually, it used to be just technical backgrounds, and now they've opened it up to any program that you're enrolled in full time. They will pay for half of your salary. So if you're someone looking to get in, oh, sorry, Pascal, you're saying something?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, sorry. So if you're looking to get into the fintech world and you're really trying to land that first job, maybe come to the employer and say, hey, look, here's this program. I'm eligible for it. It takes 30 minutes to apply, and that might help just land a job in these tough times. So I'll put the link to that in the chat here. But it's a really great program. It literally only takes half an hour to apply. We've used it a few times, and it might be really useful for people trying to land that first job.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Any other question for Austin or for Ilias? I have a question for you, Austin. We know that the market in crypto is very volatile. And does impact you if Bitcoin is low or Bitcoin is high for your business, or there is not really an impact?
So I would say volatility is good for us, just because our target customers are really looking for volatility. So whether the market moves in a big way up or down, traders will try and jump on that and try and take advantage of it. And so that creates more activity and more volume on exchanges. Hedge funds typically try to take a position and get a little bit of profit out of those big moves. So for us, volatility is good. I mean, obviously, if Bitcoin went to zero, that would be a problem, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. And overall, it's worth noting that I think throughout this whole COVID-19 crisis so far, maybe crypto hasn't come out as this golden store of value that everybody was hoping for, but there have been a lot of huge benefits to crypto in comparison to other asset classes. So we saw this huge drop in equity markets. A few days later, there was a significant drop in cryptocurrency markets. But the difference between those two is liquidity. So it's the ability to kind of buy or sell at will. When you want to, you are able to buy and sell efficiently within crypto. So it's a 24/7 market. The spreads between the best bid and the best ask, or the buyers and the sellers, stayed very close together. And that's something that we didn't see at all with equities. Credit markets completely tightened up, and the whole world kind of froze over in terms of liquidity for a little while, and crypto just kept on going. So I think that's something worth mentioning, is that it may not be completely a hedge in terms of price, but at least you're able to sell it or buy it when you want to.
Perfect. Austin, I'm going to jump in because we had a question that was asked. Maybe you can answer it if you don't mind. It's around the fintech industry. So the question is from Bassem around whether the fintech industry is still young and if there's still room for new players in different spaces to come in.
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Yeah, I won't pretend to be an expert on insurtech or payments, but I think there is still a lot of room. Definitely in cryptocurrency, definitely in the wealth management side of things. I think that a lot of the big robo advisors right now will probably have a lot of explaining to do at the end of this crisis, and I think people will take a second look at that. And it's not just a big green button that you can press and suddenly you're making money. So I think there's a lot of room in those two areas for sure, and I just don't know quite enough about the insurtech area to comment on that.
Sorry, perfect. Thank you very much, Austin. Pascal?
Any other question?
No, I think we're good, Pascal.
I will present you something. I will share a presentation.
Perfect. While you do that, I'll thank you very much, Austin, for coming in today and spending time with us and giving us your perspective as well. It's always great to hear from startups and especially those who are going through. So you'll see people are thanking you as well on the chat. So thank you again for your time and for coming and spending time with us again.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pascal, over to you.
Thank you so much, Layal. And thank you to Austin and thank you to Ilias. It was very good talk, and I'm glad that you were able to join us and to help us during this conference. We learned a lot. And thank you for sharing openly your perspective. If you don't have more questions, I would like to thank again Ilias and Austin. I encourage you to look at Consilium website, to look about Montreal NewTech and go to some event of Montreal NewTech and follow what Desjardins is doing, especially with Cooperaton. It's an amazing job they are doing together. And thanks again. I would like to tell you that this was the second webinar. There is a lot of other webinars up to May 21st. It's every Thursday at 4 p.m. And the next one is FinTech to the rescue, helping the economy. Will be very interesting. We have 2 other amazing speakers, and I hope you will be able to join. I would like also to remind you that to register for Cooperaton, it's a good way to get your feet in FinTech. I'm the case because I work in IT for almost 15 years. And after I work in blockchain, and since 1 year I work in FinTech. And I did Formaton last year. And it was very interesting. I learned a lot and I meet amazing people. It was very fun. I encourage you to register, and my colleague will share you again the link, and feel free to ask us and to contact us if you have any question. That's all for today. I encourage you to follow us on our social media. Layal, do you have
sorry to cut you off there, Pascal. Just a quick comment. I see there's a few questions regarding the Formathon. So I'll give you one last second if you don't mind. You can ask the questions you might have. Sorry, Elsa, you had some questions regarding the Formathon?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this year, from my understanding, if there's anybody that's willing to start a business or want to get into the process of opening a business through like the startup or the FinTech path, is it all going to be online this year? It's not going to be in person?
Absolutely. So we've been working very hard to develop the content and migrate it online. You will not be missing any of the elements of the Formathon that we've had in the past, which includes understanding how to take an idea into reality. How do you validate? Who do you interview and what do you interview? How do you build the right team, etc. So also a lot of elements around design thinking. We also have our industry nights, which are you get to meet one-on-one or within a group with lots of people who are in the industry currently to validate your ideas or to showcase what you're doing. And lastly, we help you build and support team formation as well. So we'll connect you to people who are also part of the competition. All of this will be done online. So we have different platforms we'll be utilizing, all of the experts and the contents, and the facilitators are aware and will be and are able to kind of facilitate through online. So it's actually a great opportunity for you guys. It's a bit easier since you don't have to worry about coming in person, and it's open to everyone in Canada because it is all online. So you have now an opportunity to work and talk and validate across the whole country, not just here in Montreal before. So it's exciting in that sense for sure.
Perfect. And just a final question. I know a lot of people that have come to me and they are interested. A lot of them ask me whether it's going to be like a 9-to-5 thing because they already have their regular jobs, and it might not be something that they can do during a 9-to-5. Is it flexible where they can show up at different times?
Absolutely. So you'll see Pascal just pulled up a slide on there. So it's the sessions take place on Saturdays. And it's usually from 9 to 3 p.m. and Wednesday evenings from 5:30 to 7. So we very much accommodate student schedules and professional schedules. So there's that. And hopefully through that schedule, you guys are able to build and invalidate what you need to make a decision as to whether you want to continue the project and then move full time on it, or if you kind of determine that this is the work that you were happy with doing, and then you can stop there as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So Bassem, I see your question as well about the selection criteria. There is really no selection criteria. We just ask that you are engaged, that you fulfill the commitment by attending the sessions. We work very hard on getting industry experts and really knowledgeable people to run the sessions. So if you are excited to build or work in fintech, if you're looking to develop research deeper or solve some of the current challenges people are facing, if you are willing to come in and spend the time during those sessions, then that's really the only selection criteria that we look for. So you don't have to be from finance or from tech. You can be from any background, any process, and you're more than welcome to join the formathon. Perfect. I don't think there's any other questions. So Pascal, sorry about that. I'll let you wrap up now.
No, it's fine. Thank you again to all our panelists. Thank you, all of you, for coming to this webinar. And please follow us on FinTech Cadence on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. And I hope to see you at Formaton, and I hope also to see you next week for the next next coming session. Thank you again, and I'm wishing you have a good day.
Perfect.